G'day mates, this is Hamak Yingli, your Quantum Odyssey tour guide, and today is the belated halftime notice. I am sorry that I'm not able to consistently make a short video on a daily basis, and now we're already on day 30. However, Quantum Odyssey has received a major update, namely we saw our first new Electron, our first new node, and it is placed right after the very first Electron on descent mode. I actually had a word with Lore, the creator of Quantum Odyssey, and another game developer veteran, Artur, last Monday, as well as had a word with the Q-World mentors. And now I am taking on two international global industry challenges, namely the first one is Mitcher's Asphalt and the second one is the Neural Quantum Nexus. However, to start this off, I have two concerns. The first concern is Artur's comments. So Artur's comments. And the second one is the scheduling of the future sessions, plus the live demo. The first concern is the concerns from a veteran game developer, Artur, who is experienced with virtual reality. He has played 30 minutes of Quantum Odyssey and he has concerns regarding information overload and text redundancy, as well as how players should progress through the game. Again, Lore already said that the game is tailored for quantum enthusiasts who wants to learn quantum computing and quantum mechanics, rather than for the sake of solving a puzzle. And Quantum Odyssey converts the notion of quantum computing into a puzzle game, much like Rubik's Cube, but except it is in an opposite direction. So Quantum Odyssey, so it's this thing. It is because people cared more about quantum computing, then they would deal with Quantum Odyssey. This is the reverse direction from Rubik's Cube, which for solving a Rubik's Cube, so Rubik's Cube, leads to group theory and combinatorics. So unlike the case of Rubik's Cube, Lore has expected that the audience for Quantum Odyssey are those which are already interested in the very notion of quantum mechanics and quantum computing itself, rather than for the sake of solving the problem, the puzzles. Well, the audience for the Rubik's Cube is the general public, especially in the 1980s. And that leads to group theory, much like, and how like chess leads to decision trees. Like the roles are being reversed. Artur's 3 points of concern are information overload. So information overload, he said, I don't get it. I don't understand this. So information overload, duplicate, cat information. Why is there a cat on the top and on the bottom? What does this one mean? What does the color and the size of this sigil mean? Then there's a text issue. Again, He says a lot of the text is, I would best say it's redundant. Players who do not understand these concepts thinks like this text is nonsense. Like, what is a sigil? What is a complex number? Already the term complex number is already getting into the realm of being mathy. Then there's a bug in the text display. Like, name of the lanes can be identified by 2 bits. What constitutes a bit? Qubit, sigil. And then this bunch of text. What is a forge? LSB convention, and LSB convention is already on the jargon side. And then there's a redundancy. Why the Sage's text too pompous and predictable? Text redundancy. So that's the second concern. And it can be related to information overload. So quantum enthusiasts want to know what is a qubit is, rather than what is a sigil. They want to know what is a circuit rather than what is a forge. And converting the text into something that's very specific to Quantum Odyssey is much like treating Quantum Odyssey as a virtual Rubik's Cube-like game. That is rather very novel and puts the concept of quantum computing as an afterthought. The most important concern, however, is progression. So progression, like after playing for 30 minutes, he is already concerned about the parallel X gates. So he said, like, I don't get it. I don't get it. So this level is crucial to understand, but it is poorly taught. This is actually the demonstration of the tensor product between 2 X gates. And then he has to know, how does the X gate deal with the NOT? Look at the fixed sigil, so on the 0-1 slot. So that means the first lane. The rightmost bit must switch from 0 to 1 to change the overall state from 00 to 01. Okay. So 00 to 01. To make it happen, place an X gate on the bit slot on the right. Then do the same for on the left. And then what is an LSB? LSB, again, is already like considered a technical term, but I have used the LSB convention throughout my videos. For example, the rightmost bit is called the 0th bit because it's like 2 to the 0th power, and the left bit in the 2 qubit system is called the first bit, much like ground floor and first floor. I'm Australian. I'm Aussie, much like qubits are an Aussie invention. So he played for 30 minutes, got to learning to fly, some level that's too trivial, and it is a repeat. Well, when is it good to like just repeat, and when is it good to learn new stuff? Rote learning. So that's his comments, which I had the meeting with last Monday. Our next topic is our live demo. So the developer today has created a 30 puzzle node that is unlocked immediately after completing the first node. And that just contains one puzzle. So let's do our live demo. So major update, learn the gameplay first. Beautiful puzzle solving without text to start. So patch number 20. Let's do the update. So that concludes the first 10 minutes. Okay, so this is our live demo for the game. So the first mode is called Descent. The second mode is called Convergence, formerly, but now it's just called Played Rank. And then Nexus is just your profile. Quantum Arena is the list of all community-made challenges, achievements. This is a leaderboard. Right now, Mulliganatius is the current top player. The Forge is where you can create challenges. So, OMG. And it supplies you various numbers of qubits. That means how many bits each of these lanes are represented. So a 3-qubit system, there will be 8 lanes, and each lane will be labeled from 0 to 7 in binary format. And there's also a limit on the number of gate depth. The set of gates that are supplied are the X gate, the Y gate, the Z gate, the H gate, control, the S gate, a few SX, T gate, a few of these other fancier gates that might come in certain puzzles, and finally the I gate. There's also a non-unitary gate called the HC gate, which we will discuss much later. Resonance is nothing more than just updates and sending feedbacks settings. So Descent, Forge, Resonance, these are already Quantum Odyssey specific terminology. Descent is the story mode of the game, and we will start with our very first Electron. Seeker of, universality. So that's a bit slow. Seeker of universal truths. I command. Heart of existence itself. Quite slow. No thought. Could this be Gen AI? Ten minutes. 10 minutes. This is our first Electron. WASD, and the mouse is used for navigation. It appears that there are 5 orbits of this, let's say, atom solar system. Clicking on the sun allows you to open the manual, which involves a lot of trivia as well as some quantum computing and quantum Odyssey specific terms like gates. These are qubit, slot, and qubit identity gate. These are quantum computing, but some of them, like sigil is quantum Odyssey specific. Sigil just means coefficient of a computational output state or eigenstate. And there's forge. Forge is the entire puzzle. The slot refers to applying X's or like certain gate operations across all pairs, quartets, or so on, depending on how many gates are applied in parallel per row. So this is our very first puzzle, unveiling the forge. Let's continue the tutorial to proceed. So in the very first tutorial, it just gives you an exploration on how the forge works. So the forge consists of sigils, the input state. If you hover on a sigil, a dialog appears. I can already see the duplication of the zeros. Take a moment to WASD. You can also zoom in on the forge and go up and down. Qubits 3, gates is 5. That is some dummy. So again, you can also increase, decrease the simulation as well. Space is for pausing, left and right is for slow and speeding up, down. So these are all. This is what Artur is a bit concerned. So sigil, information, sigil. Know that information is persistent in the universe. That is just the quantum system, 1-bit quantum system, expressed as 2 wires and a sigil. And then we're granted the X gate. The X gate crisscrosses all pairs of lanes which differ by the applied bit. Qubit 1, in my terminology, is the 0th qubit, the rightmost qubit, or the least significant qubit. So here, the input sigil is a single blue sigil of size 1 on the 0th lane. This is a 1-bit system, so 1 qubit system, the lanes are expressed with only 1 bit, namely 0 and 1. The X performs an X gate, a crisscross, between the 0th and the 1st lane. this would be the next Electron, but there's also an extra Electron that is only revealed today. Your cosmic keys, there will be 2 puzzles. So the only way to really learn this is to do it hands-on. In this puzzle, the input configuration is a qubit in the 1 state. That means, in terms of sigils, there is a full-sized blue sigil on the right. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 X's connected in series. 1, X, 0, then again 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. Okay. But you want the input sigil to lie on the 0s lane, and then nothing else. So you can eliminate all the extra gates, but not the very first gate. The very first gate is part of the puzzle. So observe that several gates. So one of them is fixed, so this introduces you to fixed gates, which are just part of the puzzle. Right click is for clearing individual gates. You can also clear all gates by clicking on the trash can. So let's try that. So an X on the 1 state brings it back to the 0 state. In sigil terms, the sigil on the right is switched to the left. The other one involves only an X. So puzzles comes in sets with the theory on the right. So theory on the right. The forge visualize all you have. Master the universe's logic is like a Rubik's Cube. Lore already said that this thing is a Rubik's Cube. So this forge is a colorful Rubik's Cube-like puzzle, but the theory behind is quantum mechanics. But the role between the theory and the puzzle has been reversed. So people come to play Quantum Odyssey because they want to learn quantum computing and quantum mechanics. In the case of the Rubik's Cube, they want to learn how to solve the Rubik's Cube because it is treated as a toy. Now, in the second tutorial, it also introduces you to advanced circuit tools, which allows you to check the state of the sigils after each layer. Hover on the sigil to see what is the state of the sigil before, so which lane the sigil is on before. The color and size of the sigil in this case is 1, blue and full size, and then the position of this sigil after, so which in this case it's 0. Remember when Artur said that there are duplicate zeros? In this case, the position of the sigils are unchanged. There's also 3 advanced features which are mathematical. State information, tensor and state. Tensor, this is linear algebra. On the other side, this is an X gate being applied, so the first one comes from the second and the second comes from the first. Copy the tensor from this state to the clipboard, which is, I don't know how this works, and copy state, which is like copy paste it onto your own text editor, maybe. And then you can also click on the input-output slot to see how individual sigils go through the forge. You can also hide or show the sigils or hover through, but Here we have starting configuration has a single sigil on the left lane. You want to bring it to the right lane. And the puzzle contains 2 fixed x's. Here's the thing. We can just add another x right after. In fact, 2 x's together is just the identity gate, the do nothing gate. So this is how to solve the second puzzle. Okay, we now have the third electron, so it just gives you more information of an impression on other gates that are important. The Hadamard gate, so here we have the one sigil that splits into 2 half-size sigils, so there they have half the area. That means their radius is scaled by 1 over root 2. So 0.71. So color info, open the atlas, so Q. The atlas, this thing, if you're not mathematically oriented, then this would require some experience and hands-on, trial and error maybe. The addition, the multiplication is used when qubits are being split. No, sigils are being split. And addition applies when sigils are being merged. Notice when the 2 real colors of opposite signs combine, additively they cancel out. And when a real and an imaginary color combine, they may create a 2-color qubit. And when they are in the same proportions, we call them yin-yangs. Blue is for positive, red is for negative, green is for imaginary up, and yellow is for imaginary down. Now this is where complex numbers comes into play. Negative, the red, is like flipping the color direction of the qubit 180 degrees. Green is 90 degrees counterclockwise. Yellow is 90 degrees clockwise. So in this diagram, the H gate splits the blue sigil into 2 half-size blue sigils. So 0.71, which stays from the 0 lane to the 0 lane. This 0.71 switches from the 0 lane to the 1 lane. Now let's check the state information. So now, state is 1, 0. Now the new state, the left lane, which corresponds to the top row, derives from 1 over root 2 of the first and the 1 over root 2 of the second row. Likewise, the same for the bottom. The bottom row comes from 0.71 times the first element of the input, or the 0th if you are computer sciencey. Now we demonstrate the complex multiplication. Green wires can also be colored. So a wire that is not blue in color has a multiplicative effect. Namely, a green wire causes the phase of the sigil to turn anti-clockwise by 90 degrees. So green, imaginary, red, negative, yellow, neg-imaginary. After 4 green wires, the sigil returns to its original color. Now it passes through red, so now it is blue and red. So you have blue and red. The answer for this is the H gate. So in this case, the red side splits into the red remains red for the half that switches back to 0. So here we have quarter-sized sigils. 0.5 from 0 to 0, 0.5 from 0 to 1, neg 0.5 from 1 to 0. This is where the cancellation comes into play. 0.5 from lane 1 to 1. There's this cancellation. There is where the addition happens, and it's by the radius. So why did this addition add too much? Because the part which is cancelled is magically transported to the sigil on the 1 lane. So after 3 electrons, we are now being introduced to the most specific important gates, namely the 3 poly gates, the control gate, the Hadamard gate, and the S gate. Good, you've kindled the forge. I'm the missing sage. So slow. I wonder if all of this text is AI generated. Let's go. inaugural gate, that's the X gate. Council of the Sages, the 4 characters of Quantum Odyssey, ancient guardians of knowledge beyond the mortals. This would be the 4th of the main electrons, the X gate, but today we are focusing on the extra electron, which the creators have done. So, mechanics of the fracture. So this is already a challenge electron, and submissions are also graded by score, which is how efficient they are. The fractures has opened. Quantum logic as now visual language, powered by the 4 sages. Axioms, roots of quantum gates. Reasons, known quantum algorithms. Purposes, humanity's grasp on order. And the missing sage, unknown and untamed. The lectures are endless. Master your gates first. Let's start the module. Let's go with it. So this one is just 0 to 1. So here you go. So time spent, gates placed, like how much times it erased, solution. So the most important factor is the number of gates used, and it's not by depth. This is a 2-qubit system. You want to bring the sigil from 00 to 10. You place the X gate on qubit 1, not ranked 1, that means the first qubit, leftmost qubit, to switch. But notice that the X also applies to the other pair. This one is a 3-qubit system, so 8 lanes. Now you want to set the sigil from 000 to 111. So this is going to be your solution. Let's do the 3 in parallel. This one is your first introduction to the Z gate. The Z gate is like a control because it only affects sigils on the right lane of each pair. So it's X to place from the left to the right, and then turn it red using the Z gate. This one's another example. You want to send the sigil from the left to the right, 00 to 11, so 2 qubits of the positions has to change. So X on both qubits, so both bits of lane numbers, and then a Z on the right qubit. So, but you can also do it on the left because it matters if, like, if that target is 1, and it can be either. Now there are 2 fixed gates, so 0 and 1. You want to bring first, there is the sigil passes from 00 to 001, but now you want to switch the immediately. It looks like you want to switch it, the left qubit, the second qubit, to the 1 lane. So 0011. That's done parallel. You can also done in parallel like that with the Z gate. But now, because the sigil is red, you can either place the Z gate after on the second qubit or on the ground qubit, and the result would still be 101. But here's the thing, you can actually do this in parallel with a depth of just 2 to optimize. So notice that recently, like, the gates placed is 6, but technically I can just place 2. I didn't remove any gates, but now this is an introduction to the S gate. So now it's X and S, so nothing more than a phase change. Now this one is an S dagger, so that's equivalent to 3 S's. In this game, it has to be implemented in 2 gates in series, in the worst case. Now you have 00 and 11. You want to bring the sigil on the left to the right. Now you want to apply a net total of 3 S's. So S, Z. You can do it this way, so to make it yellow. But a better solution is, because both qubits are on the 1 state, and then when you apply a S, that's applied to the right qubit, and then a Z on the left qubit. Now both of them would be, they combine, so you can do this in only 2 layers. Okay, now you have 000 to 101. So immediately it looks like you want to apply 2 X gates on the ground and the second, and now you want to apply a net total of 3 S and Z gates. So SZ, you can do this in parallel on the lanes that are already on the one state. This one is like a phase gate, so it is a bit trickier now, but this is an introduction on using the Y gate. So let's try Y gate. But Y gate, the best way is this. X, so now it doesn't switch, but now their Y would be the thing. It now also turns the returning sigil back 90 degrees. This one you have to do it in a depth of 1. So X gates will not work, S and Z gates will not work. The only thing is you have to do a Y gate. And because the 00211 11 corresponds to a net total of 2 bits flipped from 0 to 2, in the parallel Y gates, it is turning anti-clockwise twice. Okay, this one, you just flip the first and the ground, and then apply the S and the Z. But can you do this in less layers? Okay, so you can do the Y and then another Y, so, and then you can just do an S. Now I got a brilliant solution, but the 0 gate is a glitch. This is an introduction to the Hadamard gate. This is the negative Hadamard, so neg H, this is like the applying a phase as well, and you are only allowed a single qubit. So let's apply Y. Let's see if the Y would work. So now it will be an opposite. Let's try that. HZH. Okay, we can do this. XZX H. So there's a phase gate being applied. Unfortunately, I didn't optimize that, so you cannot do control over there, but it appears that here XX, so double X, then 2 H's. That's the solution. You will learn about basis transforms later. So that's the equivalent to performing an parallel H and then parallel Z. Okay, this one performs perform a parallel H. So parallel H on the last 2 qubits, so the 2 lesser significant qubits. Now remember that each time you switch the one lane, you apply an S. Each time you switch the middle qubit, you apply a Z. So blue-green apply together with the Z becomes red-yellow. this is your first yin yang, so this is getting trickier. So first but this suggests that you have to use an S to bring the sigils 90 degrees apart. So now after adding them, those which stay on the 0 becomes blue-green, and then those which stay on the 1 would change their sign. So this is equivalent to the SX gate. This is your first entangled gate. So you want to disable this crossing. How to do that? So the control bit would be the first qubit, the left qubit. So now, instead of applying crisscrosses X's on both pairs, you only apply it on the right pair. Okay, now this is another demonstration of an entangled state, but this time it is equivalent to the phi minus state. So it implies that there you have to perform a Z, but now you want to perform a control of X's on the top. But here's where the thing gets slightly trickier. Okay. Should you apply 2 Ys? Okay, 2 Ys would work. 00211. Okay, this one also involves a control and 2 Hadamards, and you are only allowed a depth of 2. So, first, switch the first qubit using the X to switch that. Now perform an H on the ground qubit. Now perform an H on the second qubit to split this across 2 halves. Now the right half, which is identified by the second qubit being 1, would get the S. Here we have a mystery gate card which performs S except on the left. So this appears like you have to do an X, S, X. Here, you can just use the X's to guide the sigil to avoid the S gates, which would change the sigil coloring. Here we apply more X gates. It's going to be parallel, but it doesn't matter. X on the first, and X on the and then here's where swap may come into play, but we don't need swap now. We perform an X on both to avoid the many S gates, but there's a 2-qubit solution over there. Can we see the 2-qubit solution? Okay, we could use the Y gate on the ground, and then another, because it's on the right, we can use another Z gate to revert the color to blue. That's a brilliant solution. Now I get extra points. Okay, now we have green green, we want to change it to red red. Can we do it this way? No, we cannot do it this way. I think the best idea is try to use Y. Nope. Let's try using Y to invert the colors. Nope. So this is all locked. Now you want to change this to red. Okay. Blue, red. So this approach cannot work. You cannot. And also YX cannot work either. So can we Hadamard this? Nope, we cannot. So the answer is 2 S's. So namely, the rightmost lane would have an effect of 2 S's together, so that will equal Z. So the middle lanes would have 1 S, which turns green into red. Okay, now this is very similar to 24, so perform a Hadamard, then control X. Let's refer back to 24, what it is. So 24, that is just like 24 except without the third layer. So HY and CX. Now we perform SX between the first qubit, so HSH. And it also applies in parallel to the second half, right half, but that's not relevant. Okay, now we have 3 Hadamards, but here is a hint. 3 Hadamards have the equivalence of performing 3 Hadamards in parallel over there, but this is where the basis comes into play. So, should you apply cancel out the Hadamards because the Hadamards are their own inverses. And now we place an X on the second qubit. Okay, now this is a combination of SXS and H. So HSH. Result would be the greens and the yellows together. But after that, you want to apply additional Hadamards to split this each half into 4. That can be done in parallel on the last row. This is another demonstration of entanglement. So if the control bit is 1, you have to switch the lanes, the outer qubits, and that can be done using 2 Ys. So it's to have the combined effect of turning the phase as well as switching lanes. This is our last problem, the 30th problem. So we have 4 H gates in series, and then we have to switch the color from blue to yellow. Okay, can we also try to do this in such a way that it changes color? Okay, let's try a Y gate. Let's zoom this thing in. Green, then yellow. Okay. We could just ignore the H's. Now only think about the X and the Y. This concludes the 30 puzzle extra Electron that's being posted today, and I'm placed on the top bracket. Unfortunately, I just missed the top score, but that's okay. The purpose is that it is a tutorial. Encrypt the knowledge vault, so it requires level 6. Right now I'm level 5. We will visit the X gate, hopefully to gain some more. To see the first gates, so X. X together. We have an X in a 2-qubit system, do the X on the ground. Now X on the first qubit. Now X on both. Now X on both, but now in a 3-qubit setting. Now X on the first, but now we have preset. So we have to switch and then cancel out the X's as well. That can be done in only one layer. We do the same thing. This is the trickiest puzzle. So here we need to switch the effect of 0, 0, 2, 1, 1. Okay, notice that the middle lanes are unchanged, so we cancel out the X's by adding another X. It's its own inverse. And after completing the X, it grants you the Electron over there. Master the flip. So please remember that those which are challenges tends to give you the experience. Let's try this again. Now 0000 to 1101. X gates switch all 3 of the affected qubits by lane. Now we do the opposite. Now the input is on the 1100, which switch them back using X. Now notice that the X's come into pairs and they cancel each other out. We want to perform this switch again. I didn't make it to the community's best. Okay, now after completing the Electron, I'm now level 6. This gives me the ability to encrypt my vault. So to encrypt your vault, you're given a 3-qubit system and you are allowed ten layers. In fact, the vault difficulty has decreased notably. Let's give a very simple example. So XXH. Let's try SXX to make into yin yangs. YXY into yin yangs, and H. Hopefully to make it into something chaotic, but it didn't work. So you can use control gate, control on the last. Now could we create eyes? So a yin yang and a solid could create eyes. So here's the puzzle. We now have eyes. Now click Encrypt Vault, and here you go. Let's try it thoughtfully. Notice that the H gate on the 3rd layer only applies to the pair identified with the highest 2 qubits. That's the 1st and the 2nd being 1. Now we should have a nice looking vault, but the actual answer requires only 4 layers. And you can only update your vault if it is breached. Now, after encrypting your vault, you're allowed to tackle other people's vaults. These are actually real players. Sarni, Prilikshauka, Social Enigma 5, Cilantro 5, and these are actually real players. Social Enigma, the difficulty of vaults has decreased significantly. This one is relatively easy. It involves nothing more than controlled bits of the 2nd to eliminate that. The 2nd, okay. It appears that you may need some controlled bits, control on the 2nd qubit to make the right half differ only by the Y's. Now performing H. Okay. Now on the perform a Toffoli of the 2nd and the 1st, zeros to zeros. Okay, now perform an anti-control. Now we want to invert the colors, so that looks based on the 2nd and the ground. So why doesn't work? So this suggests that we may need to use a Z. Control Z over there. Hadamard that thing, Hadamard it. Now we are left with this little bit awkward stuff. We can yin yang the. We now switch the order, so when decrypting you are allowed 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You're allowed 16 layers. So depth of 16 is okay. I think we could yin yang the rightmost using SX. Okay. So these are all Y state gates, so we can switch this by right using Toffoli and Y. So green, red, red, yellow, red, red. Okay, now we do the second half, so use the X over there. Now we can also X the first to allow second to allow handling the blue and green. Blue and green can be turned into blue and blue. Now this is an opportunity to use the Y. So Y gate, controlled Y. Now we are nearly done. These two oppositely colored gates would have an X, then perform an H, then 101, there's where Y comes into play, so Y, X. So now I'm able to decrypt the gate. Now I gain 100 knowledge and bounty inside near 5. Let's check the session, the resonant, the ranked nexus. Now I've reached level 6. I have 3 optimizer keys. The 10 comes from decrypting another player's vault seal. Let's see if there's another crazy guy over there. Brilliant 10. So this concludes our live demo for today, and it displays the 30 puzzle extra Electron, as well as the entirety of the X-Gate tutorial on the inner node and its associated extra Electron that comes into play. So here's the laptop. Daniel, Chaotic, Rockstone, Brilliant 10, Enoch. Some of the bounties rewards are higher because they have breached previous vaults before, but you can always refresh the list by exiting and re-entering. So let's refresh to see if there's anything good. Shulka, Sarni, Rock Snow, Electron, Mastermind, Diggin. This one's a bit harder, but let's see if I can breach this one. So this one is unfortunately still a relatively easy one to deal, but it may require some level of... The 53 is not familiar, so... $71.35. So now 35.35, 71. That's a half-sized cube. Sigil 35.35. Want to split between the middle qubit. We only need and only on the right half. So Toffoli SX removes the yin yang. Now we perform H on the top. Now we perform Toffoli on the right, but we could then we use like basis, the notion of basis. We only need a Z on the right to bring the qubit to the right upon applying a Hadamard, but that requires a controlled Hadamard on the right half. Now you have a SY gate, so that doesn't look most favorable. That would be like okay, so SY, so we could use doing it there and then add another red over on the right. Now apply controlled H. We perform a Toffoli again. And then we perform an H. And in parallel an X. Optimize our key again. Daniel, HJU, Chaoti, Sarni. Brilliant Shauka. So most of the most of the votes unlocked are worth 5. There's actually an achievement which requires you to get 300 bounty marks called Wanted, and that means at most 60 vaults broken and without being breached. The feared can only be obtained if the Wanted is gained. Let's see, but I know like there's a guy called Mulliganatius who has the Wanted badge. Let's see if he's also the feared. Brilliant cyber quantum cybers. What the fuck? Molygnacious the Feared. Oh my lord. Molygnacious, what the fuck? You are the Feared. So let's try to unlock Molygnacious's vault. And this is one of the earlier vaults, which has a time limit of only 10 minutes. Let's see if this is possible. 2709, 2709. So this would match 3508, 3508. So could this be matched? Let's try SX over there. So it doesn't work. We want to DI, we want to remove the I's. 53 is not a very good number, but 35 is one of the familiar ones, but not 53. 53 is not familiar to you. So 18 and 53. Let's do over there, 18 and 53. How to move this thing out of the way? Let's try. Doesn't work. So this just doubles the size. $18 and 53. But we could try to merge this together. 18, 18, 18, 18. So these are the two I's. And then the 18ers. Okay, let's try doing this. 27 is not a familiar number. Oh, now we have something that looks appealing. Now do the right hand side, so let's try. Okay, now I'm ready to break this crazy guy's vault. This crazy guy's vault. Crazy little Molygnate. That babe is gonna be busted. We can DI that. Try DIing using an SX on the right hand side. We are going. This guy's gonna be busted. This guy's gonna be busted. This guy's gonna be busted. $5, 25. This thing, this is the only thing that we're remaining. So $25, 25. We can DI this thing out. So now we apply an S. Again, S. To DI. We could also apply a Z to move this thing to the other side. But that's not ideal. So S, Z. That applies like the Y could work. This one is mostly solved, so we just have to solve the second half. So how can we convert this? Okay. So why? We're nearly done, but oh crap. Fuck. I'll have to give another shot. So let's try this again. So HHV H CHH to bring this back into something easy now. Now we do the X, but I think the X is not needed, so we don't need the X anymore, so we don't only need the H. The 18 is problematic, but the 53 is problematic, so it's H, then S to see if it can be eliminated. 35, 25, 31, 33. We could consider the I's in this case could be eliminated, so we don't want the 53, so the 53 is a troublesome number in this case, so 63 is even more troublesome. 38 is also not good, so we do an X, CSS. So perform S on the right hand side, but how can we eliminate the thing? So we could do the HSS. So HSS. Okay, so it doesn't work, so I just basically copied what I have, so CSS, CSC, and then HSS. So now the most troublesome one is the 53. So we can try to take out the I's. Now we're left with only nice numbers. Can we reduce this as well? So can we reduce it as well? Okay, this takes out the I's, so we can also try to work in 5, 5, 5, 5. So we don't want the I's over there, so Okay, let's try doing the eye method again. So yeah, we could bring that to 5 there. Let's try making this yellow. Yeah. We can make it green. So make it toffally. This baby's gonna be busted. This baby's gonna be busted. X on the last. And we're done. Fuck. This baby's busted. This baby's busted. Let's see this guy getting busted. So 001, 011. Now let's switch 011 to 111. Let's try this again. Eyes. These eyes are being eliminated. Eyes from what that's remain the same. Eyes which switch lanes upon splitting. 2 complementary eyes. Notice the blue and the red cancel out. We now have 2 nice qubits. Now the second half. 05, 025. We want to eliminate the yin yang. Notice the lanes are changing color and changing the lanes. Now yin yangs can be eliminated using the SX. We now change the color to blue and red. That means upon H it turns into a blue on the right and then combine again. So on the left, perform an anti-control to place the blue qubit on the right to the left half. So 111 to 011. We then eliminate this. So this is a little bit redundant, but red, red, blue. We don't need this over there, and we are done. We're done. Fuck. Fuck. Fuck this crap. $305. All down the drain. Let's do the forge. The summit. Then I'm only level 8. So I'm ranked 97th after all the tutorial stuff. Quantum Arena, mostly by Yaboy. Nexus, I'm now at 340. Wow. That concludes our session, and have a wonderful rest of your day. It's gonna be Dinky Die.